What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
So, Nick, Makhachev versus Olivera officially now has a backup fighter. It's going to be Volkanovski. I don't think anybody could argue that he's a deserving guy to fill in should one of the two gentlemen in the main event have to back out. But this did come as sort of a surprise.
Yeah, this is crazy. And one thing about this card that everybody's been saying is that it is star-studded. There are mega stars and great fighters and great fights, for that matter, all over this entire thing from top to bottom. Even the prelims got some fights that you don't want to miss. But the one thing they could do was add another massive name, another world champion to this list. Now, I get it. He's probably not going to fight, but moving in as a backup fighter, that just brings even more star power to this crazy card.
It really does. And much like Michael Chandler making his entrance to the UFC and also being the backup fighter in Abu Dhabi for the Khabib Nurmagomedov fight against Justin Gaethje, this is going to be a similar situation. And just having Volkanovski there and having the thoughts run through our mind of, well, how would he match up with Charles? Well, how would he match up with Islam? And maybe we're all going to watch the weigh-ins just a little bit more closely to see, how does Volk look at 155 pounds? We've seen him at 145 pounds for weigh-ins time and time again, and he's looked perfect in that division for a long time. But I want to see what his body looks like when he steps on the scale at 155. And so to me, even though he probably won't fight like you're saying, I do think it adds a little element of excitement and energy into the card.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And obviously it creates some waves throughout the division, right? You've got Beneil Dariush. He's a little bit upset that he's not the one getting the guaranteed backup spot should anything happen to the main event. But in my opinion, this is the right move. Volkanovski's earned it more than anybody. If you want to talk about 155 title replacement fighters, Volkanovski's at the top of the list. And I don't care that he hasn't had any fights at 155. He's been the champ and doing his thing at 45 for so long. And I just feel like the Beneil Dariush and Gamrot fight has to happen because we need to see which one of these guys is going to emerge as the next top contender. And I think that's just a great matchup that the people want to see. We're expecting it. And we would hate to see that fight fall off of this card. I really am excited to see these two go at it. So it makes more sense to me that they bring in an alternate and it's somebody like Volkanovski.
Definitely. And Beneil Dariush is definitely a top contender at 155. But let's be honest, the best fighter that he's defeated on this 7-fight win streak is an aging Tony Ferguson. And Volkanovski has beaten Max Holloway a few times now. He got out of one of the deepest guillotines I've ever seen in my life against an absolute submission machine in Brian T. City Ortega to come back and win that fight. He dusted the Korean Zombie. I think he's 20 fights in a row now, a 20-fight win streak. I think he's more deserving than Dariush, and Dariush has a fight, and it's a good one. Mateusz Gamrot is nobody's walk in the park. I think he's going to put up a hell of a fight against Benny, and I think you're right. The winner of that fight is going to emerge as the number one contender after the title fight shakes out, in whichever way it shakes out. But I want to look forward now because we've entered Volkanovski's name into the conversation, so we might as well play out the scenarios. What happens if Islam misses weight or something happens and he has to get pulled from the fight? What happens if the same thing happens to Charles? So let me start off by asking you, how do you think Volk matches up against Olivera? And then we'll get into Makhachev.
Well, I actually think he matches up better against Olivera than he does Islam. Volkanovski is very good at winning rounds, and he knows how to utilize his speed and his ability to move inside and outside as quickly as possible. And I think that those types of styles would cause a lot of problems for Charles Olivera because he is a bit of a brawler. Islam is a little bit more calculated, and he doesn't like to just go engage in a firefight. He will stay back and wait until he goes to take you down. And I don't think that Volkanovski's so much different than anybody else that we've seen in there with the Khabibs and the Islams, where he's going to shuck all these wrestling attempts down, and he is going to wind up on his back at some point in that fight. And I'd like to see how he does down there. But as far as difficulty, I think he would have a more difficult time going against Islam Makhachev. But on that same note, I think the guy that comes in with no pressure on him, no weight on his shoulders, like a Volkanovski in this situation, is in the best position. And I don't have the statistics, but you can see it's overwhelmingly in favor of the people that step in on short notice. They get their hand raised in fights. There's no pressure on them. They're not thinking for 8-10 weeks about one particular opponent and trying to work their way to figure out exactly how to stop the offenses that are coming. They're just coming in there and there's no pressure, and they're able to fight their fight and they're able to do their thing. And and they're not in any danger of losing their belt. They're not in any danger of falling out of the rankings or anything like that. So if it were to happen, he'd be in the right headspace, and mentally he'd be able to avoid all of the pre-fight jitters and just go out there and have some fun. And it would almost feel like a test at 155 rather than a true title fight.
Yeah, I think you're totally right with that point. The worst case scenario for Volkanovski, should he step in there, is he loses, in which case he makes 6 or 7 figures depending on how the pay-per-view numbers shake out. And the best case scenario is that he becomes potentially the biggest star in the sport fighting right now and the current champ. So, I mean, it's a win-win situation for Volkanovski either way you slice it. And I agree he does match up better against Charles than he does against Islam Makhachev, and it's for a couple of reasons. The first reason being that Charles Olivera does tend to sit down when he gets hit hard. And one thing we know about Volkanovski is even though he's a 145er, this is a person who weighed over 200 pounds at some point in his life. He's incredibly strong and he hits very, very hard. So I think he would be able to sit Islam on the ground. And then the Ortega fight showed me everything I need to know about his submission defense. He was mounted in one of the deepest guillotines I've ever seen and fought his way out of it. So the dog in Volkanovski is certainly unquestioned. Now, Islam Makhachev, as you said, is a bit more calculated than Olivera is. He's somebody who's going to be patient. He's going to wait his time. He's going to get you against the cage, and then he's going to implement his game plan, which is take you down, keep you there, and do as much damage as he can while you're there without compromising his position. He'll sit in half guard, he'll mount you, he'll take side control and hold it just to win rounds and do damage. So I think getting up out of that and defending against that, especially having only been training for a month because Volk did just come off of thumb surgery, I don't think it's enough time to prepare for an opponent like an Islam Makhachev. And I do believe Volk's strong enough to handle Makhachev, but maybe not so much as technical as Makhachev is on the ground. And I think for that reason, Makhachev would be able to keep him down there and do enough damage. And I would see Makhachev in that sense winning a lopsided decision.
I would have to agree with you on that. And one thing I know is that if Volkanovski is able to get his hands on that 55 belt and is a simultaneous 45 and 55 champ, that significantly heightens his chances of getting a fight with the notorious one, Conor McGregor, at some point in his career. And I think even though Conor hasn't been so active lately, he is the money fight. He is the big fight. And I think all fighters from 45, really from 35 all the way up to 85 are just wanting to get their hands on Conor McGregor. So I think that all in all would significantly help Volkanovski's chances at getting the big money fight.
Totally agree. Thanks for watching this video, guys. We're your hub for all things combat sports. If that's your jam, we appreciate a subscribe and a like on the video, and drop us a comment down below. We'll see you next time.
Peace.